Okay. Good morning, everyone who's just joining us now. I'm going to wait for a minute or so just to see how many people arrive, because it is only 1 minute past 10. If anyone's like me, that they'll probably arrive a bit later than that. So. Okay, great. We've got some more people come in now. So I will do a bit of an introduction first. Good morning. This is Fry Festival. It is our third day and we are very excited to be here. Just to let you know, this webinar will be recorded, but we will not be able to see any of your faces. If you would like to ask any questions, then please just pop them in the Q&A section so that our panelists can see them. This is the Creativity at Work, Rest and Play webinar, which we are very excited to have and to be here. And I will just, excuse me, it's got quite sunny. I will just introduce the panelists, or you can introduce yourselves actually. If we start from Claire.
Hi there. Yes. Hello, I'm Claire. I am founder of Open Stage Arts Fun Singing and Drama classes here in Oxford. I am also the host of the Creativity Found podcast, in which I speak with people who have found or refound their creativity as adults. And I have very recently started creativityfound.co.uk, which is a building directory of places you can go to find ways to tap into your creativity.
Hi, I'm Cassandra. I'm a textile designer and hand weaver based here in Oxford. I run two businesses in parallel. I run the Oxford Weaving Studio, which is a community-based studio where people can come and learn to weave. So I sell looms, tools, kits. I run workshops. I have membership where you can come and spend some time weaving if you already know what you're doing. And I also run my own design studio, which is called Cassandra Sabo Designs, and I design textiles for the home. So throws, cushions, lighting, that sort of thing. And I do that from my studio based at Makespace Oxford in Jericho.
Okay. Humphrey, I'm a coach who uses creative interventions in my coaching. So I do coaching supervision and mentoring, and use a range of interventions such as writing, poetry and photography when I'm working with people.
Brilliant. So just to let everyone know, this is a sort of panel discussion followed by a Q&A. So again, please put your questions in the Q&A box, and then followed by a short little exercise run by Deborah, which we're absolutely very excited for. Also, I'm aware that it is Remembrance Day, so we will try and finish before 11 o'clock so that everyone can do their silence. If not, we will do the silence on the Zoom. Okay, so next question. Was this where you had always planned to be, and did you follow a specific path through education and career? I think we'll start with Claire again.
Yeah, hello. No, not at all in any way where I expected to be. I wanted to be a dancer. I have a degree in dance and related arts, whatever that means. And whilst doing that, I thought, hey, I'm not good enough to pursue a career in dance. So I chose my next favorite thing, which is books. And I pursued a career in publishing, which I did managed to get into and thoroughly enjoyed, and I am still a freelance editor to this day. So that was a career path. I've had children along the way. So it was only 5 years ago when I was feeling quite horrible with anxiety, and I was seeing a counsellor. And at one point she showed me this circle, and it has all these pieces of pie in it for your balanced life. And I had lots in there for, you know, responsibilities and work and other people. And there was nothing in my fun for yourself piece of pie. So I had a little cry about that. And then I tried a few other things. So I was trying, so I made a point, I'm going to go and do something that's just for me and just for fun. And I couldn't find anything that really suited me. And what I wanted to do was to sing and dance and act a bit. It's something I've always enjoyed. And I couldn't find that, so I started it myself. So what was that fun piece of pie actually is, you know, it's a job now. I'm the organizer of it. I hire the teachers. I try and get people coming along to the classes, do all the marketing, networking and what have you. I do take part in the classes as well. So that's how that came about. And then it's just kind of developed from there. When we went into lockdown, I obviously wasn't doing those classes in real life. We did some online ones. And it occurred to me that I'd been meeting along the way in my open stage arts journey, meeting other grown-ups like myself who were either looking to get creative or returning to something that they've done in the past, because in the middle bit, somewhere along the line, creativity gets put on the side. It's not the most important thing. So it might be your family, it might be your career, it might be societal expectations. Somewhere along the line, that gets pushed to the side. And for whatever reason, those barriers ease, or maybe you come to a shocking realization, for, you know, some people do that reintroduces them to their creativity. So that's how the podcast started. Been chatting with some absolutely brilliant people about their stories. And then the directory came to mind as the next step. The podcast is inspiring people by other people's stories. Look, this person did it. They made a pig's ear of it first time, but they tried again, and that doesn't matter. Stories like that. Then I've come up with the idea of the directory. So there's somewhere you can go, a listener or other person can go and say, I want to try something. Where can I go to give something a go? For example, they may not know about the Oxford Weaving Studio and the classes and products that you can get from there. So this is a space to go to and go, I fancy trying this. Let's have a look. So creativity in that way, sharing creativity, helping people get creative. Although the books I edit are creative books, so they do help people. It was never something I thought I would be doing. And all of this is not something I thought I'd be doing age late 40s, early 50s.
Thank you. I think that's really relatable as well for a lot of creative people, having to put the creative side on the back burner and then having the sudden realization that you're not necessarily doing what's bringing you passion really, or life.
Exactly.
Cass, can you tell us a little bit about your journey, please?
Yeah, sure. So my journey, I guess it sounds in many ways there are parallels with Claire, but my journey was a little bit different because I grew up in Canada. And I, the first time around when I went to university, I actually studied engineering, and it wasn't necessarily the course that I probably would have set out to study to begin with. I was incredibly creative when I was in my my early years, when I was a kid and when I was a teen. But my problem was that because I was bright in terms of doing well in sciences and maths, there was a big push at that time, probably in the 80s and early 90s, where they were encouraging women to go into science. And because I was good at those things, it kind of made sense for me to follow that path. And it's also because I enjoyed them. it was not so much that I was good at it, but I liked it. And so what became sort of just, sort of maybe the result of circumstances, I ended up applying to do an engineering degree, and realized actually that I had not given any time, or had no time, to pursue anything creative when I was younger. So it meant that I ended up getting into a degree where I was basically doing maths, had never really, explored anything further. I mean, I know now that I should have probably applied, to be an architect. That's what I would have been probably quite good at when I was younger. But I can't draw. So I started off on this engineering degree and realized about 2.5 years in, I absolutely hated it. It was awful. For the first time I found something, actually, I knew that it wasn't for me. So I didn't finish my degree. And that was kind of a big sticking point with me, sort of, up until my early 30s. And when I was trying to work out what it is that I wanted to be when I grew up, I kind of took a lot of time to start exploring that. So I did quite a lot of traveling. I kind of worked for many years in Montreal in finance, and then decided, actually, this is not the life for me. I was only in my mid-20s, and I thought, right, this can't be it, just working in a bank or something equivalent for the rest of my life. And then realized, okay, let's go traveling, let's go and see a bit of the world. And actually, in doing that opened my eyes to a lot of different things that were out there. It also meant that it gave me the freedom and time to explore things, where, to find out what I was good at. Because like I said, because I couldn't draw, that seemed like the obvious route to finding, to going into a creative degree. But that massive limitation, at least, from my view, was really what was holding me back. So I explored other things. Like I tried watercolors, I tried calligraphy, I tried, some life drawing in the end. I did, there's so many things I can't even list. But it took me a long time to work out that actually I am really creative, but it doesn't necessarily come in the form of drawing. And then I found myself in London. I ended up meeting my now husband as well, which kind of meant that I was starting to find roots. And by this point, I was in my early 30s, and I realized actually that there was such a thing as a design degree. That, of course, was a revelation for me, because if I look back at the opportunities in Montreal, it used to be either fine art or graphic design. That was it. And I can't draw, and I didn't want to be on computers. So there was no route. So actually coming to London and realizing there were so many other things possible, it was just incredible to work that out. And then the journey began, where I was actually trying to find what I was good at in terms of being creative. And I came across textiles. I realized I like making, I like doing things with my hands, and I don't really have to draw. So, weaving particularly is an interpretation of what you're seeing. So you have inspiration and you can get to an end result. That means that actually you are creating something, but it doesn't have to be a literal translation. It's what's up here, as opposed to, what I can get out on paper with a pen. And so, weaving is also a great combination of my skill set, because it combines a very practical minded and technical minded discipline. Weaving is perfect for an engineering brain. So all you scientists out there, don't limit yourself to the point where you think, actually, what I know and what I'm good at, I can never be creative. Actually, you'd be surprised. I can imagine lots of different disciplines like silversmithing and pottery that require that kind of problem solving and kind of practical mindset. And so for me, I found weaving. And then, the journey so far has been that I started out as a designer of textiles and fabrics and interior products for myself, for my own development. And then came across, this idea of teaching. And I think it's because I went through that teaching experience as a student very recently. It resonated with me. And so I started getting lots of people asking me, do you do workshops? And I was like, I do now. And so that's how more or less the Oxford Weaving Studio was born. And that is almost 3 years ago now. And it's more or less when I found a home here at Makespace Oxford. Means that I have a big enough space to accommodate people. And then I meet loads of people who are just like me, who want to try something new, who come from all kinds of different backgrounds. None of these people will be professional weavers or even, hobbyist weavers who regularly weave, but I think, you know, I love the fact that people are coming in to open up their minds and try something new. And that's something that I try and encourage, you know, when people come, you know, come to my studio, because it's not really about weaving. It's about tapping into their creativity and finding a way that sets off that light bulb for themselves, the same way that it happened for me. You know, I didn't really have that opportunity. Nobody gave that to me. I discovered it on my own. But if you can give somebody just a little bit of inspiration in terms of, oh, there are loads of things out there that I can try, and actually I might be good at it, you know, and it doesn't necessarily mean you have to follow that as a career. It just means you have the options for you to feel fulfilled in your own time and in your own space.
Yeah, I love that idea of using the thing that inspires you to sort of inspire others, even if it's not to do the same thing.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, I don't imagine many people come away and actually say, I want to do weaving as a career. It's a tough one in the art sector, but you know, it is that whole thing of combining that sort of the practical and the creative. And like I said, there are loads of disciplines out there where you can actually, you know, that crossover, it really, you know, intersects.
Absolutely, yeah. Deborah, are you able to tell us a bit about your journey?
Yes, certainly. So I absolutely didn't associate with creativity whatsoever. In fact, I was actively discouraged at school by all the creative teachers. You know, they'd say, oh no, you're completely cack-handed, no needlework, no drawing, no painting. So I had a real kind of issue with creativity, and really liked the art subjects, English, history, and despite all that, I found myself doing mental health nursing. And it was really interesting as I reflect back what made me jump into mental health nursing, because I had no experience of even what it was. And my family were in Australia at the time, and I was there. And I remember we were coming back, seeing an advert, and it said, if you really want to do this, you can take part in drama therapy, arts therapies. That sounds great. And so I applied, I got in, I think just when I think back to my interview, and then spent a long time working in the health service. Also worked at Brookes, actually, teaching, nursing. And creativity didn't enter my head, but actually I was in a very creative profession, because when you're working with people who are in hospital with mental health problems, they're very unwell. And you have to be very creative about how you build connections with people. But sometimes those things, when you're doing them every day, feel like the norm. And, you know, I wouldn't have described it as a creative profession. When I was 55, I got the opportunity to take early retirement. I hate that word. And I knew that I didn't want to go back into nursing or the health service. And I realised the last few years I'd been taking part in lots of different sort of creative classes. So I'd been doing jewellery making, silversmithing, going to yarn fairs, have a little secret obsession with sheep. So I was going, and interesting how, you know, you had sheep and how you got this beautiful wool. So spent my time doing that. And I was also doing creative writing classes, and I realised that was something I'd enjoyed way back. So I spent a year studying around writing for wellbeing, which fitted in with the mental health bit of my career. And then I decided I wanted to stay working with people, but I didn't want to work at the very acute end of when people are very unwell. So I did my coaching training at Brookes for 2 years. And for my dissertation, I suddenly decided that I wanted to explore how photography helped people. I think my life's a series of, suddenly deciding. So I asked people who were mentees to take a camera out and just photograph anything that sort of touched them about their experience of being mentored. And it was astonishingly moving, some of the things that came up. So when we were talking about the photographs, myself and the person who was taking part in the research would end up in tears sometimes. And I just realized that photography and writing had a way of working in coaching. And in groups, so I use a lot of groups doing that. I'm also a body-oriented coach, so we use a lot of the body and drawing. And it isn't about people being good at those things, because like me, they often have hang-ups from school. You know, I can't write, it's about my spelling, it's about my grammar. And that's all inconsequential, really, because it's around expressing yourself in a different way, in a mindful way. And just tapping, I think, into a part of your brain that you think, oh, that's a surprise. And it can also be quite light. It doesn't have to be really deep. You know, I don't offer therapy. So sometimes we just giggle and write silly rhymes, or we read poetry and see what that triggers. And again, I didn't think that was creative till somebody said to me, "You're really creative." I said, "No, not me." But you know, now I realise I am, and one of the joys of it actually is meeting other creatives. So you know, I've only met Claire and Cass through this journey. So yeah, it's fab.
Great. Thank you so much for telling us about that too. And I think it's interesting because I think a lot of you sort of touched on that idea of you don't necessarily have to think you're good at something to enjoy doing it.
Yeah.
And to be honest, in my opinion, you probably are. I think everyone is good at creative things in their own way. But I'm going to ask you a question now, just to mix it up. So, what issues do you think you face as a female starting a new enterprise as a second chapter?
Should I start with that one? Yeah.
Yes, please.
So I think I faced quite a few things. So I was quite senior in my previous role. So there was suddenly a change of identity, from going from a very senior, very identifiable profession. You know, if you said to people, I'm a senior nurse, they knew exactly what that was, to becoming a student again in your 50s. So that was a bit of a challenge. And then there was a real difference, I think, I started to notice between the females and the males around when you give yourself this new role as a coach, and said, I'm a coach, and with charging for your services. And I think there's an awful lot, you know, when you're not offering a product as such, you're offering yourself. How much are you worth? You know, so I would say to people, you know, oh, don't worry, you don't have to pay. And my male colleagues would say, Deborah, get a grip on yourself, you know. And so I think it was really, really hard to gain the confidence that you weren't just this person here as a student, you had this lifetime of experience behind you. And, you know, you weren't coming in in a vacuum. So I think I just sort of stripped off everything that I knew and thought, oh my God. And then there was a bit of age thing, you know, people say, oh, you're starting again, you're in your 50s, why aren't you just gardening? There's nothing wrong with gardening, but, you know, it isn't what I wanted to do as a career. I still want to be successful. So yeah, it's been quite an interesting challenge for me, and not to get sucked into that and think I'm just playing, thinking this is a career. First time somebody said to me, you're an entrepreneur, I was like, oh, no. Then I thought, oh my goodness, I am. So yeah.
Yeah, that's really interesting, Deborah, because I think for me, there's something, you know, sort of similar to that. And actually, it's only when we started speaking sort of about this event that it kind of occurred to me as well. I think women, particularly, we go through sort of so many phases in life where we have many different identities. particularly around, when you have children, or, when you're going out to the workplace, you're kind of changing it, you get married, then you're a spouse as well. I mean, I know this is, men have some of these things, these challenges too, but I don't think it wears on men in the same way that it does with women. I mean, I personally, never really enjoyed working sort of with women when I was younger. Not that I didn't like women. I always, I had a great laugh, and it was always, quite fun, but I always felt that I put myself in situations where I was working with men. So like, for example, my engineering degree, I was always surrounded by men. I then went to work in finance, and again, surrounded by men. And it was only when I started, going to the arts, I found myself studying and being surrounded by women all the time. And I found this a really interesting dynamic for me. I mean, mind you, I was a bit older, I was in my early 30s. So for me, it was kind of a different, different situation. But it was, I think it was okay. And I, enjoyed it until the point where I actually realized, oh my gosh, I'm having kids now. Now I'm a mom, and I'm, finishing my degree while I'm having kids. Then I'm, I've graduated. Then I'm trying to start a business, and it's not going well with babies because I don't have the time and mental capacity to take on board so much. And I think that that disruption and that sort of a lot of changes happening at once meant that when I started charging, like you, Deborah, just, saying about what your fees are or what a piece will cost, you kind of don't really have a point of reference. It's almost like you say, oh, I'm starting from scratch. I'm new at this. I'm, okay, you can have it for £20 when, the value is 200. And you just kind of don't think about why you're pricing things so low, but it's all this, maybe this baggage that you start to collect at some point that you realize, actually, no, I've had, even though I'm a new weaver, I have had, already 15, 20 years of experience of life. I've worked in finance on trading floors, like I've, you just think, why am I underselling myself? This is ridiculous. And it took me, I think, many years before I realized actually that I should value myself for the work that I put in. I've put in not only the years that I've studied, but all those years that helped bring me to this point in my life. And it's the same thing, whether you are 20 or 30 or 80, you have experience, and that you have to try and think like, I am worth something. And I think it's particularly difficult in the creative sector because there are many people who do the arts as hobbies, not just professionally. And I think that's where the lines get blurred, where people do undervalue themselves because they'll sell on a platform, I don't know, like for example, Ravelry or Etsy, and they just want to recoup the cost of the materials because they enjoy the making process. So the low price that they charge, you then think, well, somebody's doing this professionally. Why am I going to pay them more for what they're doing? But you're also paying for that person's expertise and experience and knowledge and all the other things that come with running a business often, your overheads, etc. But really, it's about value. And as a woman in the creative sector, starting in your 30s, 40s, 50s, it's so challenging. You have to be really confident about what it is that you what you're doing, and finding a way to, justify is the wrong word, but feel that you're getting the value for what it is that you're producing or the services you're offering.
Definitely, yeah. There's so many different things to think about when it is women and creative things, and all of that it's a big topic, and I'm really interested to hear your insights. So Claire, have you got anything to add?
Not necessarily on the female side of it, but definitely the value side. It's something I hear a lot from my podcast guests. And I think also that's often a reason why they stop doing their creative thing, because people will be told, well, what's an artist? What job is an artist? An artist isn't a job that earns you money. So go and do this, pursue this. It's often at an educational stage or an early stage of life that those examples of how creativity can take you on a career journey are often not there. People don't know what they can do with their creativity, and that's where it often gets put on the back burner. And when you have that experience and a bit more comfort, you're able to bring it back out again. But valuing the arts is a big off-put for young people.
I think that's changing though now. I think younger people are less tolerant of being brushed aside and being considered that, whatever it is that they're doing is not a job. Like a video game designer, that's a real job. Someone who tests video games, that's a real job. I think people's perception of what art is and a creative job is, I think it's brilliant that things have really kind of come along a long way. I know the traditional ones like maybe weaving and ceramics and jewelry, those are kind of ones that everybody can identify and with and understand, but there are so many different branches to being creative and the arts that I think it's really changing the way people view creative careers. And I like to think that in the future, people will be more open to these types of jobs, because I think there is a lot going in the way of automation. And I think it's the people who are creative will be the successful ones. And I don't mean successful in terms of money. I just mean the people who can think for themselves rather than relying on software or just, the automated processes that are out there. I think those are the creative people, the ones that are really going to, find a place for themselves in industry, whether that's, I don't know, computer gaming or painting. I think that's a big part of it.
And that's why creativity is so important to enterprise. And I think that enterprise, more and more people going out on their own, coming up, having their ideas and being bold enough to take them to fruition and put them to work, and the connection between those two. So it may be a creative enterprise that you go with, and there's a lot more support for entrepreneurs. And we're seeing it around us a lot, that you don't have to go and work for somebody else. You can try something yourself. So it may be a creative enterprise, or it may be another enterprise, but it's your creativity that is making it work. And you are using, there are ways to use that. So it's much wider. And I think you're right, Cass, generationally, that's improving, and we are having a much better understanding and respect for creativity and career and economics and going forward.
Yeah, no,
I think
sure.
it's about not putting what we mean by creativity into a box and saying, creativity is being a successful artist, creativity is, writing a book. I think that, starting your own business is a creative process. For me, who comes from health and teaching, that is absolutely a creative profession, but they're not marketed a bit like that. And so I think it's helping people, particularly through schools, have a real responsibility of saying, you are creative. Just because you can't draw doesn't mean you're not creative.
Sure, that interpretation, absolutely. It's like, it's not so linear anymore. The lines are blurred. I mean, I look at my husband, for example, he's a headhunter and he works in financial services headhunting. So you think not a creative job at all, but actually his job involves how to persuade people to, look at new opportunities, it's moving people from one job to another. There are many creative solutions to that problem. You can't just say to somebody, you'll get more money. That's not going to entice somebody to, who's worked at a job for 15, 20 years to move companies. You have to come up with creative approaches to how you address this problem. And I think it's that whole problem solving part of any job that will rely on creative skills. So it's not just about, what we perceive as a creative job, but every job has the opportunity to inject creativity into it. Every job. And it's those people, the ones that were coming up with the big ideas for the most mundane tasks sometimes. I won't say they're also the ones that get rich, Mark Zuckerberg, that was brilliant, but, it's that thing where, you find, a new idea, you approach something from a different angle, even in the most mundane task, that actually you're creating value for your company, for the job that you're doing, and that's what makes you stand out. So creative, using that creativity in ways, in any industry is really important.
Molly, I've just seen, I think, are we talking too much?
No, no, it's great hearing that you've got to say. I would just say to the audience, if you do have any questions, please pop them in the question and answer box soon, because we will be getting to them soonish. But I think you touched on it a little bit with what you were saying when I asked you the question about being a female starting a new enterprise. Actually, no, don't worry about that. That was me looking at the wrong thing. But can you tell me a little bit about your favorite aspects of having a creative enterprise and how you feel you've benefited from setting up on your own? And we'll start with Cass.
Yeah, so that for me, I mean, there's a lot of practical reasons. Starting when I was in my 30s meant that I didn't have to go and make endless cups of tea for more senior staff and not learn anything. By starting at the bottom, it felt like for me that, you know, I could just create my own job, have the flexibility to, well, work around family, which is again one of the practical reasons of why I kind of wanted to start out for myself. But it was also feeling valued right from the start and not being thought of as somebody who's, you know, who doesn't have any skills to offer. Because I think even, you know, 10, 15 years ago, it was really difficult for women to come back into the workplace having had some time out or retraining in their, you know, mid whatevers. You know, coming back into the industry was really tough. They didn't really have a lot of support for women who were, you know, kind of trying to find that middle ground of being a parent and also working in a 9-to-5 job or even, you know, longer hours. And I think for me, that was one of the big draws, is I could work flexibly. I still work probably more hours than people do who are, you know, employed by someone else, but those hours are on my they're on my terms. So I know that, you know, if I work best around dropping off my kids and picking them up at school, you know, that's an important thing for me at this stage in my life. So, you know, it isn't for everyone. But at the same time, you know, I also love the fact that no 2 days are alike. You know, it's creative from beginning to end, and every decision I make, everything that I think about is of my own sort of, well, for the good or the bad, is me. You know, I am in control of what direction I'm moving, and I can adapt quickly when I need to. I don't have to answer to loads of different people. You know, and kind of, you know, navigate things in a complex way. I can just say, no, okay, today I'm just doing this, or, you know, next year I don't want to do that. And so I can make those decisions for myself. So I think, you know, being your own boss, yeah, there are lots of positives for sure, but also then you think of, okay, every decision I make, it hits my bottom line. So I'm also responsible for making a success of this business. So if I make a bad decision, then it's on me, you know. But I also think that's part of the, you know, the process of growing and changing, not only as a person, but as a business person. You know, the journey that I set out when I started sort of weaving, you know, I would say when I came to Oxford 3.5 years ago, I had no idea I would be at this point in my journey. I had no idea what this job that I've created, it didn't exist for me. So that's also the beauty of it, is that you have that sort of flexibility and freedom to kind of to be yourself and to find, you know, what it is you want to do and how you want to do it. Because when you're constrained by others, sometimes, you know, you don't really get to show your true colors. And that for me was a big part of choosing not only a creative degree, but also having a business that that is my own.
We actually have a comment from the audience here. Josie says, I love that point about creativity. We can all tap into our strength of creativity in every job we're in, and we should be focusing our attention on how we do this, be it in our day-to-day tasks, how we connect, communicate with people, even during this pandemic, our strategic objectives, how we engage with teams, how we can look at our jobs differently through a creative lens.
Yeah, absolutely. Because if you can step back from a problem and you can approach it from a different angle, I mean, it can have a completely different result. So that's, yeah, totally agree with that.
Great. If Deborah or Claire, do you have any points on this question? Then I think we'll move on to audience questions, because I can see we've got some in the box, which is nice.
Yeah, I just concur with Cass on the adaptability, problem solving. Personally, for me, it's meant meeting a lot of people, which has been absolutely brilliant. Building confidence. I very often start with a load of ideas in my head and then go, well, that sounds great. How do I get from here to here? And there can be a lot of learning in there that you can do yourself. Sometimes I can be completely jumbled, and then a little step by step by step, I can actually get from here to here. But it takes some learning and process, and that builds your confidence and just lets you know that you can do amazing things that you may not have realized that you could. Just a bit of a positive spin there.
Oh, I would so agree with that, Claire. And I think, so I started quite recently, 2 years ago. But some of the things I've done have been so unexpected. And, one of the things I do at the minute is I work occasionally with a charity where we look at support and development for people working with horses. And, if anybody had said to me 3 years ago, you're going to be stood in a field with a horse, looking at well-being and coaching, on-the-spot coaching and support, I would have said, oh no, I'm terrified of horses. But actually, that's gone now. And I think that freedom to experiment, for me, there's lots of difficult things, it's and I sort of launched into this without knowing all the difficult things. But the freedom, I think, to experiment is just great.
And yeah, and you touched on, Deborah, the learning. You too, Claire. I mean, learning every day, I'm learning something. Yeah. Whether it's a new app, new software that I'm having to work on, or, solving a problem with my loom, or, again, hiring. How do you, switching hats to kind of learning, okay, now I'm an employer, like what each of these jobs, we don't necessarily bring all these things to the table when you're running your own business. So the constant learning, I mean, it's great in many ways. Also, sometimes I think, oh, I want to stop learning. Can I just get this task done without having to learn 12 things first? But it's, again, and I think as you get older, it's really important to keep learning, because that's what keeps you fresh. It keeps you, like you said, Claire, meeting new people. It keeps you connecting in ways that you're, and your brain. I mean, yeah, the learning element of it is also a really big, a really important part of, doing something like running your own business.
I think one of my fears when I started was that because it's quite a small sort of field of a small pot of people doing the same, sorry, I'm getting this wrong, a large pot of people doing the same business, that there'd be a high level of competitiveness. And what I would say, particularly amongst my female colleagues, it has been completely supportive and a joy actually to meet other people who support you and want you to succeed as well. It's not, like, oh, you're taking my business. So I think, that's one of the real bonuses for me. I've met lots of new people who want you to succeed.
Great. Thank you so much for your answers there. So speaking of learning, Marilyn says, do you find it difficult to market your business, and how do you advertise? So I think if anyone jumps in on these ones.
It's a full-time job. It can be a full-time job to get seen, and not only to get seen, but to then for that person that sees you to take action on it. So personally, for me, it's a matter of just keep being in wherever you can. Just try to get seen wherever you can. I've got people this term coming to Open Stage Arts. When I ask them where they found out about it, they say, oh yeah, I saw it a couple of years ago. You just have to keep going and going and going, and it's a long term. So it's all the usual channels, and choose your social media widely, but that's not the only thing. And also I think connecting one-to-one with people, actually speaking to people, not just in networking, but when people approach you, you're there to answer them. You're not just a face on your social media. But yeah, it's constant.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it is, yeah, marketing is a tough one. I think also it's finding ways to do the marketing that is true to you. There's ways. So I am a terrible communicator when it comes to writing. I think it's my nemesis. And so if you say you have to write a little blurb for somebody's blog post, that is like my personal hell. So I try and avoid it. I would rather do a video where kind of like this situation where I'm speaking, and I am much more relaxed in doing a live session on Instagram than writing a blog post for to be included in anything. So find what you feel good and what are your strengths. And go with those, because they'll happen more regularly, which means then, with Claire, the constant need to create, content is there, but do it in the way that's most natural to you.
I actually recruited, somebody who helped me build my website, and now we have sort of regular one-to-ones because she's got a marketing background. Coming from the NHS, you're never short of clients. And I sat in my house and I thought, where are we? They're not coming to me. So that's a big learning for me. I have to say, Claire, I think you're the queen of marketing. You're so impressive with your consistency around it. And I think it's the consistency. I wouldn't say I'm kind of at the top of the game at all around marketing.
Thank you. Got another question here from Grace. She says, can you tell us more about that taking off point of leaving behind a well-paid career and how you navigated that to ensure you could still afford what you needed to?
I think for me, I was in a really fortunate position because I'm so old. I had a very good occupational pension, and working mental health was classed as a particular career that you could retire at 55 with your pension. So I knew that I was going to be earning a lot less than I was, but I did know that I had this safety barrier, so that was really helpful. What I would say about that was it was also constraining, because at times I wanted to leave and do something I knew I couldn't because I had this pension. So it is a different lifestyle, and you have to realize, you're going to do things differently. But I had comfort blankets. I know I'm incredibly lucky.
I've done it a few times. One in sort of the situation, Deborah is talking about, sort of in my early 30s. So I was able to kind of devote more time to studying full time while, my husband was able to support me. But I did it in my 20s. I was working in the dot-com boom bust, working trading securities back in Montreal. I was only 24, I think, at the time. And that was the moment where I said, actually, I'm not really happy just doing this, but I was making, at that time, good money for me at that age. It was a great job. People would have killed to have my job. And many people, kept asking me when I was going. I was like, I'm not leaving. And then I actually one day woke up and said, actually, this is it. I'm going to go out and see the world, and giving that up was hard. And I remember being in a it's funny, I had some really close friends that I had stayed in touch with, who I graduated with, who I studied with, as teenagers. We got together randomly when just before I happened to leave to go traveling, and they said, wow, that's so brave of you to give up your job and your security and all of the things that come with working in a full-time job. And I was just thinking, you know what? I think it's really brave. I can't not do it. It would be worse for me to have stayed in something where I was not particularly happy. I was still needing to explore. There was a burning desire to do something different. I had no idea what it was, and I just took the leap. And I was paying off credit card debt while still traveling the world. I was a broke backpacker. Yes, I didn't buy my house. I didn't get married. I didn't do all the things that people expected me to do at that age and that time in my life. But it was the best thing I did, because it taught me a lot more about myself. And made that journey a lot more informative for what I wanted to do later on, and more likely to take risks at an older age, because it meant I've done it once and I landed on my feet. I can do it again. And that's the thing, not being afraid to take those risks when they present themselves, because most of the time it works out, and you find a way to work it out, right? You work really hard. I worked, 3 jobs, 60 hours a week to make sure I had some security, to know that I had a little bit of a blanket when I needed to. And when I had security, that it was okay. I could take my foot off the gas and I could balance things out, because nobody handed anything to me. I had to work really hard to get things, especially when I was younger. Like most people now, you kind of have to be flexible and willing to work hard for it.
Great, thank you. So there's a couple more questions. Deborah, just to check, how long do you want for the writing session?
5 minutes, but if we've got more questions, I think, let's just see how it goes. If we feel that we are running out of time and the question's more important, let's just deal with that.
Okay, great. I will keep asking the questions then. They are quite good questions too. So Sophie asks, do you ever find it difficult to balance the creativity you use for work and the creativity you use for relaxation and mental wellness?
I think everyone will say definitely yes to this one. It's a massive subject it's a massive theme on the podcast. Now, obviously not everybody on the podcast is being creative and making it a career, but there is still that balance of when you can enjoy it and turning it into something more than enjoyment. And at what point do you then go, I'm not actually enjoying this anymore? And Cass will say that there is a balance between the actual doing and the actual promoting and the admin and blah, 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 which is something we've spoken about on Cass's podcast, and I speak to with a lot of guests. So I'll send back over to Cass for the rest of that, but it's a big theme.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I started, I wanted to be a textile designer and a weaver, and I probably do that at the moment about 10%, 15% of that is weaving. And that's really for me a direct result of lockdowns and sort of changing my business from being where everybody is coming into my studio and I'm able to go out and meet clients for commissions, etc. So I turned it into an online business, and then I created a bit of a monster with an online business now, one that I didn't want to necessarily have. It's what I set out not to do. It's like saying, it's just ended up something different. But I think the good thing is, in the long run, I will have a more robust business because I'll have both the online business and I will have my commissions, and the commissions have started to come back, and that is a direct correlation with me being out at events and talking to people. So and I know now that I have things in the pipeline, which is great, which means I will be weaving more. So when Claire and I talked about this probably a year ago, it felt like I was never going to get to this stage. And I think maybe it was a situation, what was happening with lockdowns, but it is really tricky. And I think, setting clearer, stricter boundaries with myself, that will help me going forward, where a certain number of days will be devoted to the admin and the paperwork and the marketing. And then there will be, specific days while I'm actively weaving, because otherwise, I was starting to get really distracted, I would say, during lockdown, where I was finally thinking I hate this. I didn't sign up for this. It's not but now I'm at the stage where I'm getting help with it, so I can afford to pay other people to kind of, rely on their skills, move me out of the heaps of admin and move me back into the place where I am at my best, and that's actually weaving and creating. So not an easy one, but yeah, I'm getting there.
I think for me, working with mental well-being is sort of a core of my practice, and I think I don't always practice what I preach. And I realized quite recently I'd done none of the classes I was going to do. I used to go regularly, and a friend just said to me, Deborah, do you want to do this? I had no idea what it was, but it was a friend I did sort of creative classes with. So I said, oh yes. So I spent Sunday learning how to lino cut, which was great fun, playing with paint. Can't draw, so I had the most basic design. But sometimes I have to remind myself that I like writing. I like taking my dusty old camera out. But it's very difficult as you're focusing down on business.
Absolutely. Thank you. And our final questions from JC. They say, thank you for that inspiration. Loved all your creative narratives, very inspired by your career paths and how you've got to where you are now. What advice would you give to people who are longing to start out on their own? What first/micro steps would you suggest taking to enable someone to take that scary plunge? What a great question.
Yeah, that's like the holy grail. If we can answer that, wow, we're all sorted. No, I think my point of view, it's take the baby steps in terms of working out what it is you enjoy doing. I actually once did, there was a book called What Color is Your Parachute? And it was, there's probably so many different versions of it now, but it was basically trying to look at all your skill set, things you liked, things you enjoyed. And it was working out in a like sort of paper algorithm, of what skills were your best. And actually for me, that was an insight into, oh, okay, I never really thought about this side of the things that I enjoy or don't enjoy. But then it's just going out and doing things. So meet people, talk to people who have career paths that you think sound interesting. It's kind of, I guess, research. If it's a creative thing that you're looking to do, try it, do a short course, speak to people, do more things, try them, experiment, just have fun and play. And then once you get to the stage where you're maybe thinking you want to make the jump into education or something more formal, or, just lay it all out there and don't be afraid to take that plunge, because it is a big, scary step when you're making the decision. But once the decision is made, it's no longer scary. Yeah, you're in it and you're doing it. And then, you just kind of make the best of whatever opportunities you have. So yeah, just start small and figure it out.
I was almost too frightened to answer the question, because obviously it's different to everyone, for everyone. I'd certainly do a very big point on support, as Cass has already mentioned, on seeking support, speaking to other people, getting out there. Really, there's so much support out there in real life, because you're also going to find, if you were to take it, you're going to find yourself a bit lonely, a bit doubtful, a bit isolated, all of these things. And you need other people there that are saying, oh yeah, I went through that. That was rubbish, whatever. So that, be aware, and don't go looking at the social media thinking everybody's wonderful, look how successful they are. That's hiding a whole load of paddling underwater. Everybody has gone through some hard times. I'm going to hand back to Deborah because I forgot the other. Adapting, that's the other really thing. Don't be afraid to change. So I'm not talking about the micro steps, sorry, I'm not answering the question. But what I am saying is, as you move along the journey, if something doesn't work, it's the beauty of being your own boss, change it. Don't be afraid to adapt.
Yeah, flexibility, I think, is really important, Claire. I think for me, I think, mix with people who, have a creative sort of leaning. But also, I'd have to say this, start doing some free writing every day, write for 6 minutes on your thoughts. Don't worry about your grammar, your spelling, try not to take your sort of hand off the paper. Do that for a month, see what comes up, and then follow those themes. So write from your heart. And I'm sure you'll get some ideas there from what you want to think about. But certainly play. Don't take it too seriously at this stage.
And ask for help. Don't be afraid to ask for help.
No,
absolutely. So many times I thought I had to soldier on and work it out for myself. Nope, just ask for help. There's loads of people out there, either whether it's social media, your dad, the neighbor down the street walking the dog, somebody will help you work out your solution to your problem. So yeah, asking for help is a big one.
It is. I think a lot of people get trapped in that one. They don't think they can ask for help, but it's so important in any enterprise to ask for help. I'm aware that we're coming up to 11, so I'm going to suggest that we take the silence on the call. Okay. Just while we have a minute, there will be, if Deborah, you're okay to stay for a little bit later, hopefully there will be a writing exercise. So anyone that needs to go, that's absolutely fine. But if not, please do stay on. Thank you, everyone. Oh, excuse me, my voice keeps going this morning, which really isn't very helpful. It was working yesterday, obviously. Okay, so are all our panelists okay to stay for a bit longer? Great, all right, then I will hand over to Deborah.
Thank you. So this is a bit of fun, and this might be something I'd ask somebody to do in coaching if they're struggling around self-esteem, but we're going to make it fun today, so not to go too deep. So if you've got a pen and paper, on the left-hand side of your page, can you write entrepreneur down as do it vertically. You've got ENTR. Spell it however you want. You know, don't worry about spelling at all. So when you've done that, I want you just to think quite spontaneously, and with the start of each letter, I want you to write a word or a few words that come to mind about your skills and your strengths as being an entrepreneur. So whatever happens, whatever words, but make it positive. So what you're writing in effect is a list poem. So like I said previously, this is writing from the heart, and don't hesitate to be brave. Take a couple of minutes. If you don't finish, don't worry. And once you've written it, keep it on the paper. Don't try to change it. Oh no, that's not me. You just take another minute to do that, if you need a bit more time. If you come to a finish where you are, then just read back to yourself. If we were doing a group with this, I would ask people to share, but I'm not going to ask you to do that now. Just have a quick read and see if there's any surprises that come up from any of the words you've written. And if there are, that's something you may want to take away and think about, put it into a positive box, because I think we're quite good at thinking of the negative first. So in coaching, we would then explore that, or in a group, we would explore it a bit more. Obviously, within the limitations of this, we can't. But perhaps put it on your wall if it's positive. And as you're thinking of some of those small steps, thinking if you've got the courage to do it, refer to some of those strengths, because they'll all be important. And with that, what you're doing with your writing, you're not self-censoring if you're writing spontaneously. Quite often we have these ideas, but then put a big but in the way, and then we concentrate on what's after the but. So this is to help you concentrate on what's before that but, to take that forward. So that's a real snapshot into a type of exercise that we might do. So we'll just leave it there because of where we're at. Hopefully there was some little insights came up for you.
Absolutely, that was brilliant, Deborah. I mean, there's a lot of things I didn't know that I thought I had in that, so thank you. And thank you so much, all of you, for this today. It's been absolutely amazing. You've said such insightful things, and I think the audience really enjoyed it. And thank you so much for the audience for your brilliant questions too. It's been such a great hour. And yeah, thank you. And if anyone is interested in the other Thrive events we have, please do visit just search Thrive and Brookes, and it will come up. And then we have an Eventbrite too. And if you would like to find any of Claire or Deborah or Cass's website, then I believe my colleague has put your websites in the chat at the top as well. So please do check them out because they all are amazing. So thank you, and I hope everyone has a lovely day.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Take care.